Okay guys, and welcome to another video. This one we are doing the paper 3 mathematics element of the balance of payments. So I suppose we better just get straight into it. Okay, so this whole bit that we're talking about, this whole paper, this whole video is previous exam questions that have come up on paper 3 of the balance of payments. Okay, so in the country of Guardia, the currency is the gamma. The exchange rate of the United States dollar, USD, to the gamma is 1 equals 6.2 gamma. Now, just to be clear, I'm going to read everything, of course, but all of this stuff, would have been answered in the previous video. So you don't need that for these questions, okay? But what we do need to do, is answer this, which is state two factors that could cause Guardia's current account to be in deficit, even though its balance of trade in goods is in surplus. Okay, well, if you forgive me, I'm just going to put this here because I've written it on a separate sheet. And what we're saying here is, and I'll just refocus that. Okay, so what we're saying here is that there's other accounts on the current account of the balance of payments, not just the balance of trade in goods, but there's a balance of trade in services. So Guardia could have had a greater deficit on its services account, so something like transportation, insurance or tourism, and as such that greater deficit would outweigh the surplus on the balance of trade in goods. Okay, there's the income account. Okay, so Guardia could have had a greater deficit on its income account, so what we've got is profits, interest or dividends on its overseas assets or on wages paid from overseas. So what we're saying is that the amount of money leaving Guardia from people working in Guardia compared to the amount of Guardians working abroad sending home, the foreigners working in Guardia could be sending more of their income home than Guardians working abroad sending back to Guardia. That would be a deficit on the income account in the current account of the balance of payments, and that could, if that was greater than the surplus on the balance of trade of goods, then that could lead to Guardia's current account overall being in deficit. And the final one is current transfers. Guardia could have had a greater deficit on its current transfers, example something like overseas aid. So Guardia could have been giving aid to foreign countries, that's money leaving Guardia, leaving the balance of payments, measured in the current account, then it would have received from foreign aid or other reasons like that. So that's the answer to the very first question. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, and it's very important that you do understand these things as we go through, of course. Okay, so the next one is, determine the size of Guardia's current account. Is it surplus or deficit when the sum of the financial and capital accounts is 2 billion surplus? It's a plus answer, so it's in surplus. Well, what you need to know is that the current account equals the opposite of the financial and capital accounts added together, with, of course, net errors and omissions. But usually in paper 3, they don't really take heed of those things. Okay, so if the financial added together with the capital account is plus 2 billion, well then the current account of Guardia has to be minus $2 billion, has to be in deficit of $2 billion. And that's very important that you understand that there also. Now, to try to make this as easy as possible, now, so this is always, you're going to be getting something on like a table, usually in terms of balance of payments and stuff like that. So it's very important that you kind of understand how to read this. Okay, now a few things have to be kept in mind. Okay, so this country, Urbania, has a current account deficit of $125 million in 2017. All right, so that's the first thing, which is this down here. And the next one, exports of goods, imports of goods, exports of services, imports of services, net income, net current transfers. All right, so we have all of this information here. And what we're asked to do is to calculate V, which is the export of services. Okay, well, the thing is, what we need to realize is that all of these, all the way down to the minus 49, all the way down to net current transfers over this side, all right, all of this is part of the current account. And the thing is, we know that the current account is in deficit of 125 million. So what I've written here, I've written export of goods plus export of services minus import of goods minus import of services plus or minus net income. okay, which it could be a positive or negative, all right, depending who earns what and where, and then net current transfers. So what I mean by net income, it's called a number of things. So it's net factor income, which is NFI, net factor income from abroad, which is NFIA, and basically it's how much foreign-owned factors of production in Urbania earned there and sent home. Okay, that's a minus figure on the current account. So that would be a minus, but we would make it a positive figure, the amount of Urbanian owned factors of production abroad, how much they earned there and sent back to Urbania. All right. So, well, let's look at this table and see where we get all of these figures from. So the export of goods is 1527. So I'm going to 1527. I'm going to try and keep my writing small. Plus the export of services, which is V. Okay. So plus V minus the import of goods, which is 1393. Okay. So we've got 393. Okay, perfect. Minus the import of services, which is 954, because we're importing, so money is leaving the economy. That's why it's a minus. Plus or minus net income. Well, it depends. So we see that this is a minus. So more foreign factors of production have sent. Well, so foreign factors of production operating in Urbania have sent more money out of Urbania than Urbanian factors of production abroad have sent in. So this is going to be a minus 35, yeah? And then we have plus or minus net current transfers. And what we're seeing is that Urbania has given more transfers, not in terms of paying factors of production, but in terms of overseas aid or something like that, okay? Like the previous example, which is minus 49, so that's minus 49. And then what does that equal? Well, all of that equals the deficit. We know that, which is minus 125. Okay, so now what I suggest is we kind of gather, not exactly like terms in maths, but what we do is we gather the pluses and the minuses together. So I'm just going to write this because this is the export of goods, and I'm going to write the import minus the import of goods, minus the import of services, minus net income, and then minus net current transfers, plus V. We know it has to be a plus because the export of services, and that is a plus on the current account of the balance of payments, and all of that equals minus 125. So then what I've done now is I've added all of these minus numbers together. Of course, this 1527 is a plus. I'm going to say minus 2431 when we add all of these together, 2431. And then plus V equals minus 125. Well, if I take this away from this, what I am left with is minus 904 plus V equals minus 125. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the minus 904 over. I get V equals minus 9, or excuse me, now that is a mistake. That's a plus because I brought it over from there to there, so I have to change the sign, minus 125. And then what we get from all of that equals V equals 779 million. Okay, so V equals, I'm going to put it in here, in dollars, 779 million. Okay, and I hope that makes perfect sense to everybody, all right? So all we're doing is, and this is the way it will always be, it'll be the current account, the capital account, and then the financial account. Okay, so keep that in mind also as well, please, guys. That's usually at least the way that they do it. And we know that all of these added together have to equal minus 125 because we were told in the question that there is a deficit on the current account of 125 million. Okay, hope all of that makes sense. Now gently moving this camera down. Okay, so distinguish between direct investment and portfolio investment. Now this actually is something that's very important to know. Direct investment is to do with investment in physical capital. And forgive my writing, it confers some significant degree of ownership or control. That's the definition of direct investment. Okay, you're buying into warehouses, into machinery, you're operating the business, you're running it. Okay, it's you know, like Ford Motor Company sets up a plant in a different country. Okay, that's direct investment. They have to buy the machines, the warehouse, the capital, all that kind of stuff. And they are the ones that are running it because it's their business. Okay, so they have a huge degree of ownership or control. Whereas portfolio investment, and this is like, me as an Irish person, let's say living in Ireland, buys stock in Ford Motor Company. Okay, I don't have a huge amount of control because unless I have a large part of ownership of the business. And one stock in Ford certainly won't give me a large ownership of it. So portfolio investment refers to financial investment, such as shares, I said stocks, or bonds. A share is a part ownership of the company and does not confer some significant degree of control. And as I said, I certainly would not have a significant degree of control if I bought one share in Ford Motor Company. However, it would be part of the financial account. Now, on to the next thing. Using the information, actually, excuse me, I will need this again. Using the information in Table 5, calculate the financial account. Right, well, let's have a look at a few things here. All right, first things, the current account plus the capital account plus the financial account equals 0. So do you remember what I said already in this video, that the current account equals the opposite of the capital plus the financial. So that means you have to bring it over, and if you bring all them over and add them together, you'll get 0. It'll balance essentially, okay? Well, how do I know? Well, the first thing I'm going to write down is the current account is minus 125. And the question you may be asking, and rightly so, is how do you know that? Well, I know that because it says Urbania has a current account deficit of 125 million. That's the very first thing. Now let's examine the table again. We have net capital transfers of 11, more money's coming in than going out for capital reasons, and net transactions and non-produced, non-financial assets, that's another 6 million that's coming in as opposed to going out on net. So this is what we do, we just write plus, I'm going to write 6 plus 11, or 11 plus 6, it doesn't matter. Now, plus, well, we're trying to calculate the financial account, so we don't know what that is, so we just write in plus FA, and we know because of the nature of the balance of payments, how it's constructed, how it's calculated, we know that it has to equal 0 when you add the current account plus the capital account plus the financial account, and if you want to be very, very, I suppose, comprehensive, plus net errors and emissions. But for these questions, we can assume those away. So what I've got is I've got minus 125, and then I've got plus 17 plus the financial account, and all of that equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to add 17 to minus 125. I'm going to get minus 108 plus the financial account equals 0. I'm going to bring this over to the other side, and I'm going to get the financial account equals plus 108. Try not to make the same mistake that I did in the last time. And now here I'm going to write answer. The financial account equals, and don't forget the dollar symbol, 108 million in 2017, I believe, but we don't have to worry about that. But it is 2017. Okay, now, using the answer here, and of course I'm going to have to refer back to this table, but using your answer, calculate the value of W, right, which is the reserve assets in this table. Now, before we do, we have to understand how the financial account is calculated. And it is net direct investment plus net portfolio investment plus reserves. And add up all of those, and that equals the financial account. And of course, that can be negative, okay? But in this case, it's not, all right? So, well, where are we going to find these figures from? Well, let's have a look back at the table. So we've got net direct investment is minus 196 million. So the first thing I'm going to do is go 196, okay? Now let's have a look else at what this says. Net portfolio investment is a positive, and it's 285 million. So I'm going to write plus 285. Okay. Reserves, well, what does the table say? Well, it's W, because this is what we're trying to calculate. So plus W. Now I know it can be plus or minus this, that, and the other, but I'm not too concerned about that. Equals 108, the financial account. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to put that page on the ground, and I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm a kind of a creature of habit, really, so I'm going to write the pluses first. 285 minus 196 plus W equals 108. Okay, so I'm going to write 285 minus 196 is 89 plus W equals 108. I'm going to bring this 89 over. I'm going to get W equals 108 minus 89. And then I'm going to have an answer of W equals 19 million. And that is going to be my answer there. Okay, and I really, really hope that makes perfect sense. Now, just to be clear, I've intentionally skipped this question, and it'll be covered in another video. Okay, and where are we now? Excellent. Now, so we're on to this and back up to the top with the camera. Okay, so the government of Urbania is concerned that the rate of inflation is significantly higher than its close trading partners. Okay, so it says, outline how Urbania's relatively high rate of inflation might affect its current account balance. Now, let me find this here. Excellent. So I've put this on a sheet just to make it easier, okay? And I'll make sure that you guys can see that, okay? So outline how a relatively high rate of inflation, relative to our trading partners, relative to the people that we're buying and selling to and from, okay, might affect a country's current account balance. Well, think about it. If our prices are rising faster than theirs in general or on average, which is what a relatively high inflation rate is, exports will become less competitive, and imports will become relatively cheaper or relatively more competitive compared to domestically produced goods. Okay, so our goods that we're selling, our exports, become more expensive. Their goods that they're selling to us, our imports, what we're importing, becomes cheaper compared to our stuff. So as a result of this, export revenue is likely to decrease and import expenditure is likely to increase. Now, if that happens, if we start to spend an increasing amount, and we already know from this question that the current account is already in deficit, well then, if we start to spend even more money on exports, or on imports, excuse me, and they are buying less, they're spending less of their money on our exports, well then the current account deficit is going to increase, it's going to get worse, okay? And that's the answer to that question there. Now, on to the next one here. Outline one method other than attempting to reduce the value of its currency, which may be used by the government of Urbania to reduce its current account deficit. Well, again, lots of manipulating the document camera here. So one is contractionary demand management policies. And again, you must excuse my writing. These policies reduce disposable income. Now, reduce the income of the people, the amount of money that they can spend. Okay, well, if you reduce disposable income, this is going to reduce the demand for imports. Because if you reduce disposable income, people have less money to spend. And what you find is, as a country gets richer, the amount of imports into that country rises. So how does the government just reduce a disposable income? Well, essentially, there's kind of two ways. There's contractionary fiscal policy, which just takes money off people and spends less. Or there's contractionary monetary policy, which means that it's more and more difficult to borrow money, so you don't get access to it as easily as possible because the interest rate rises. Okay, so there's one demand management policy. Okay, now the next one is perfect, you can see it. Okay, supply side policies. Policies that are designed to make goods and services produced by the domestic economy more competitive internationally. Don't forget to cross your T's, guys. Internationally. So we've got government spending on education. Now, it's going to take a long, long time for supply side policies to come into effect. We know that from our studies already. Okay, but government spending on education or government spending on infrastructure. Okay, if the road system is very, very poor, doesn't do its job, massively long waits in traffic and what have you, well then what we can see is that that adds costs essentially to businesses trying to get the goods and services to port. The port may be very, very poorly organised, maybe far too small for the volume, long waiting lists. All this does is just add to cost. And the last thing is protectionism, to reduce the demand for imports and stimulate exports. So I just said tariffs, quotas, domestic subsidies, etc., etc. So I hope again, guys, that really what I want you guys to see is that this stuff is easy and you are capable, more than capable of doing it, and not only doing it, but doing it well. Now, okay, I think that's me done with that. So I shall put this on the ground. Okay. Now, let's have a look here. The following table provides selected data from the balance of payments for Alpha, this country Alpha, in 2016. Now, what I want you to see is this is all over the place. Okay, there's no real rhyme or reason for the numbers here. So as I said is, you do usually get it, and yes, you do get it in order. It's not always going to be a guarantee. Okay, so using the data in table 1 above, calculate Alpha's current account balance for 2016. They seem to love the current account balance all the time, and I think that's good because it just means that you're absolutely sure that you know what you're doing and how to answer these questions. Well, what's the current account balance? Like we always said, right, it's the balance of trade in goods, which is this, the balance of trade in services, which is this. Now, I have a tendency to say net factor income from abroad, net income, as we saw in the previous question, net factor income. Please don't ever get confused or concerned. Okay, there's plenty of names for this, but if you see something about net and income in a balance of payments questions, it's usually to do with it really can be only to do with the current account. And plus or minus net transfers. And again, you see, it's sometimes it's net transfers, other times it's just transfers. Okay, so there's no crazy worry, no problem whatsoever. Now, we will see, I'll come to this now. So, what we've got here is the exports of goods is 852. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write 852 minus the imports of goods. And just sometimes, I change out how I'm going to do it just because I want you guys to see that it really doesn't matter. There's no absolute one way, but you have to calculate it. But so here I'm going exports of goods minus imports of goods plus exports of services minus imports of services. I could have added this and this, the export of goods to the export of services, and then taken these two added together away from that. It really doesn't matter, guys, okay? Now, export of services. Well, where am I going to find this? Now, let me see if I can find it. Okay, so I have it here as 409 plus 409 and minus the import of services, and I have that here as 435. Okay, 435. All right. Now, plus or minus net factor income. And see, this is the thing that I want you to see here, guys. Net investment income. That is true from just, I don't like the name of it, but it can be referred to that because it's from foreign investments. And the income that we get from foreign investment, the initial investment is part of the financial account, okay? Or, yes, it is part of the financial account. But any income that we receive as a result of those injections is a current income. It happens every year. It's a current income. It happens every year. So that's net investment income. So this is a plus because it's a positive. So I'm going to write plus 144. And let's see about the transfers now. Where can we get these transfers? Well, just looking through this, we see net current transfers minus 170, minus 170. Okay, absolutely no problem there. So if I go with all of this kind of stuff here, if I just add up all of this here, please feel free to do it yourselves at home. And actually, I won't do it now, but I'll just work it out. So this is minus 3. And if I add up this 144 and this minus 170, I get minus 26. Okay? And if I join these together, I get minus, and don't forget the symbol, 29 million. And what's that? That is a deficit on the current account of 29 million. So what you can do is a deficit of 29 million, you can write that down, that's absolutely perfect. Or you can write down, as I have done here, minus 29 million. But do not write down both. Do not write down a deficit of minus 29 billion because that's a double negative. Or 29 million even, because that's a double negative. Now, on to this question here. Outline how Alpha's current account balance for 2016 is likely to affect the exchange rate of the currency. Now, again, there are plenty and varied ways of answering many questions in the IB. If you want to just learn off one of them, absolutely spiffing fine and dandy, no problem, right? But all I'm saying is they will accept different answers, and you just have to get the point across to a degree, with a good degree of accuracy, with a good degree of detail. So, the one that I personally like is the first one. A current account deficit implies that the supply of a currency exceeds the demand for that currency, and I should have probably written in, but it's not required, at that exchange rate. So therefore, this causes the exchange rate to depreciate. Now, there is potentially, two reasons that will happen. One is the demand for our exports has fallen, or two, our demand for imports has increased. So if the demand for our exports has fallen, that means foreigners are buying less of our currency because they don't want to buy as much of our goods as they were previously. So demand for the currency has decreased because the demand for our exports has decreased, causing a leftward shift of the demand curve, which causes a depreciation. And I mean, like, you could even be more detailed, and you probably should, but that's all that was required for that question. Okay, so you didn't say the demand curve for the currency, Anyway, no problem. Or the supply of the currency has increased because we're buying more imports, which I didn't write, and it's not required to for this question, but I would give more detail than a lot of the times in the mark scheme. Causing a rightward shift of the supply curve for the currency, causing a depreciation of that currency. Now again, guys, I really, really hope that you can see from that these questions are not that difficult, okay? You've got this. Like, you're more than capable of answering these perfectly, and I really, really hope that these videos are making sense to you, okay? I really do. Okay, so the following table provides selected items of the balance of payments for country A. Imports of services, exports of goods, capital transfers net, current transfers net, exports of services, portfolio investment net, income net, imports of goods. There we go. Now, again, using examples from Table 1, very important. Outline the difference between debit items and credit items in the balance of payments. Now, guys, do not forget, what we are doing here is we are tracking money. Is the balance of payments, right? We're tracking money. Now, yes, it's the value of goods and all that kind of stuff, no problem there. But we're tracking money. Now, I haven't been using these terms intentionally up until this point because, one, I want to increase understanding, and two, essentially, I was waiting till this question. Debit items signify currency outflows. That's what they are. That's all they are. Currency leaving. Well, how does currency leave? You're buying a flipping import. An example of that, okay, and it says using examples from Table 1, is import of goods. Credit items signify currency inflows. Okay, so that means the money is coming into the country, whichever country this is. Anyway, country A, okay, and that is exports of goods. Okay, so the goods are leaving, yes, but the money is coming in, and that is what we are keeping track of in the balance of payments. Now, I will just slightly move this down. No, that's too much, forgive me. Okay, so that's pretty good there. Okay, so calculate the current account balance from the data given in Table 1. It's almost always the current account, right? So again, I've gone this way, and you could, which is the exact same way as the previous question. All I'm saying is you could add up all the credits and take away all the debits, and you would also get it that way. It's entirely up to yourself. But I've got export of goods. Okay, so where am I getting this one here? So I've got exports of goods 3240. I'm going to have to write small. 3240 minus the import of goods. Okay, well, where's import of goods? Here, down the bottom, 3519. Okay, so minus 3519 plus the export of services. Here we go, 1928. It's a plus, it's a credit item on the balance of payments because money is coming into the country when we export services. We do provide a service for someone abroad and they pay us. That's money coming into the country. Minus import of services, and I know where that is, that's at the very top, which is 1590 minus 1590. It's a minus, it's a debit item because it represents outflows of currency, money leaving the country. People abroad have provided services for people here in this country A, and as such, people in country A send money abroad to them. That's a leaving of money from country A. Okay, now put all that in the bracket, no problem. Okay, and then where do we get now? Plus or minus net factor income here. Okay, well, income net. And again, guys, another thing that you should be getting from this is that they have just different names, and it's minus 456. So more money was being sent out of country A by foreign-owned factors of production than was sent into country A. Foreign-owned factors of production in country A then was sent into country A by country A-owned factors of production operating abroad. That's what I want you to see and understand from that. Minus 456. And what's the last one here? And sorry, current transfers. Silly me. Okay, current transfers. Where are they? Here we are. Current transfers net, which is minus 488. Minus 488. Okay, well, and please feel free, and I would encourage you to do this at home as well. If you add and subtract all of these numbers, you get the summation of all of those numbers. We get 59 minus this, which is minus 456 minus 488. And basically, if we sum all of these together, what do we get? Well, we get minus, and it's a big minus, okay? 885 billion, a huge minus on the current account of the balance of payments there. And again, guys, forgive me for repeating myself, but I really do hope that that makes sense to you. Now, on to the last bit here, okay? Explain two implications of a rising current account surplus. Okay, well, two implications of a rising current account surplus. Now think about this, okay? The currency appreciates. Foreigners are buying more of our goods, more exports, okay, than we are buying of their goods, okay? So the demand for our currency has increased relative to its supply. So that means there's an outward shift of the demand curve, which is going to cause the exchange rate to rise, which is also called an appreciation of the currency. Okay, but if it's on a floating exchange rate, if it's a fixed exchange rate or a managed exchange rate, it's called a revaluation. Okay, so another thing now is, well, if that happens, if our currency becomes more valuable compared to others, well, then we're losing our export competitiveness. And it's an unusual thing. You gain competitiveness by, a number of different policies. But let's assume that we're just producing more and better goods than other countries, and therefore they can buy it from us at lower prices than they can produce it themselves. And then what happens? Well, because everybody starts buying from us, the demand for our currency rises, outward shift in the demand for our currency, an increase in the exchange rate. And now what happens? We've got reduced export competitiveness, and that's true, okay? But it's still... I would be very much against manipulation of currencies for a number of reasons. Because why did we sell all of those goods to them? So that we could be in a position where we could buy more goods from them in the future. All right, we're selling more now. It's almost like a form of national savings. But anyway, enough of that. I don't want to get too much off the point here. So reduced export competitiveness. This occurs as a result of the currency strengthening, which we've just already discussed here, thus making exports more expensive on international markets. And that's absolutely true. Now, if we are running a current account surplus, what's happening? Okay, the X minus M is positive. Well, what is the X minus M part of? Well, it's part of aggregate demand. So if that's increasing or moving greater into surplus, well, that's an outward shift the aggregate demand curve. Okay, so as exports are greater than imports, aggregate demand will increase, possibly leading to inflation and growth. Okay, all of that's relating to unit 2.2, okay, in the previous a few units back, I suppose, okay, in the macroeconomic stuff. Now, on to this one here, which is something that I've already done, right, excellent. And now on to the very last question, and forgive me while I adjust the camera, to the very last question on this of this video, okay. So, the following table shows 2012 data for country X. All figures are in billions of dollars, okay. Now, using the data in table 1, calculate the balance of trade in goods and services for country X. Could not be more straightforward, guys. You have to understand what the balance of trade is in general. It depends on your definition in terms of, are you talking about goods alone, services alone, or balance of trade in general is the balance of trade of goods and services. So we look at the data and we say exports of goods and services. Okay, well, the exports of goods and services is 78.5. Okay, that is a credit item, an inflow of money. Okay, the imports of goods and services is a debit item, an outflow of money. And if it's an outflow of money, it's reducing the value of the current account because this is being measured in the current account. All right, so if I take one from the other, what I get, and I just write my symbols down here, $29.8 billion. Okay, it is a surplus. Okay, why not? ANS, balance of trade in goods and services is a surplus equal to 29.8 billion. Okay, guys, as always, I really hope that helped. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video.